Colin Kaepernick is a biracial American civil rights activist and former quarterback in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers that played for 6 seasons, 2011 through 2016. He is known for protesting injustice by refusing to stand for the national anthem and protested police brutality and racial inequality. Doing so, he risked his football career and is now blackballed by the NFL.
The social issue that Kaepernick has addressed in his activism is racial inequality and police brutality. As we've seen in recent news, this issue continues to be prevalent. The first time that Kaepernick sat down during the national anthem was at a home preseason game in August of 2016. Kaepernick had not informed the team that he was planning to protest because he wasn't seeking approval from anyone to stand up for a social issue that is so important to him. A reporter asked him about it, and he said, "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." Kaepernick did receive backlash for taking such a public stand and going against the norm of a pre-game ritual and ceremony.
Howard Bryant joins us now. You heard Mina's last line there, Howard. Why do you think it is that Colin Kaepernick is still out of the NFL when others who protested racial inequality and police brutality back in 2016 have remained on rosters?
Well, because he's the symbol, I think, more than anything else. And when you're the symbol, they make an example out of you. And he's been the example that they've made out for the last 4 years. And I think that what this really says more than anything else was the payback was permanent, and it has been permanent.
His protest, obviously a peaceful one. In the context of this past week, it looks even more so. The players wanted the NFL to admit it was wrong in silencing players from peacefully protesting. Roger Goodell did that yesterday, Howard. How much weight do you put in those words?
Well, you know what, David, I don't put a lot of weight into it for a couple of reasons. One is because I disagree with the commissioner. The players, they did listen to the players. They listened to the players they wanted to listen to. They listened to Malcolm Jenkins. They listened to Anquan Bolden. They listened to a lot of players. What they did do, however, was they absolutely engineered the end of one player's career. And not only did they end one player's career, but they actually created an entire organization to neutralize him. The Players Coalition exists because Colin Kaepernick was kneeling. So it's a lot of this is misdirection to me. I think the real problem with what's taking place here is if we're all about what we've been seeing for the last week in terms of all of these statements and such, can you have reconciliation without truth? Can you actually talk about moving forward and actually caring about these issues when you still couldn't even mention Colin Kaepernick's name? You couldn't mention his name and you couldn't mention police. Now, these are very difficult issues, obviously, but at some point you have to face the issues, right? I mean, at some point you have to be able to say, here's what's happening, and we're going to clean the slate. And there's no chance right now that it even appears that they're willing to do that. So I'm very dubious about all of it.
Oh, okay, so if he mentions Colin Kaepernick's name, if Colin Kaepernick gets back in the league, what does that mean for the NFL on its stance for racial equality?
Well, I think it means something very significant. It means that the NFL is recognizing that it has to be what it says it is. You cannot have all of this commentary. You can't have Roger Goodell giving statements. You can't do all of that. You can't say Black Lives Matter if you're not going to recognize the black life that you ruined, that you actually went out and actively sought to end his career. But I think the more important part, David, is the fact that they're a $15 billion industry, and there has to be room for everybody. There has to be room for all of these different attitudes and these different points of view. You saw it with the video with the players yesterday. And there's no way that you're going to be able to say that you're an inclusive organization to everybody if you're going out and you're actively silencing the players. I mean, I just feel like when I think about this, I think about the ability of a country to be able to handle the truth. You know, you have to be able to handle what's taking place. And it's actually one of the areas where we're at our worst, is the inability to actually sit down and say, listen, the world's not going to collapse if Colin Kaepernick is playing football in the NFL. If anything, it's actually helpful.
Are you optimistic? Do you feel like anything has changed with the NFL? I mean, as you know, this has been an unbelievable period in this nation's history, just the last 10, 12 days. Do you feel like the NFL has moved at all here?
Well, I feel like the country's coming apart right now, and I think it's bigger than the NFL, and I think that when you see all of these young people in the street, and you see them as passionate as they are, and you see the response, you look at all of this, and you see the type of confrontations that you have. It's very scary right now. So when I think about the NFL, I think, okay, I'm looking at the NFL, the NBA, basketball. I'm looking at all of these different organizations out there putting these statements out about equality and about togetherness and about having people's backs. And now I want to see what you're about. I want to see what you're going to actually do. And I think that that's the part where is it a reckoning or is it just another dance?
Yep, we're going to find out, hopefully, if it's just corporate PR with these statements or if there's some legitimate support.
Colin Kaepernick took a peaceful public approach when protesting injustice on people of color and police brutality. Critical race theory is reflected through Kaepernick's protesting, since he emphasizes how since he has such a big platform as well as football games that he plays are being watched by hundreds of people, he is showing America a mirror of themselves and how the system is flawed in speaking up about important social justices. The three main concepts that are intertwined in both Kaepernick's protesting approach and this movement are dominant racial ideology, racial stereotyping, and direct racism. Dominant racial ideology describes black athletes as natural athletes and white athletes as smarter. Racial stereotyping are beliefs about typical characteristics of members of a given ethnic group or nationality, their status, society, and cultural norms. Finally, direct racism is when someone is directly insulted for ethnic, racial, or religious reasons. Kaepernick, being an African-American quarterback and speaking out publicly, was told to just play football instead of speaking out about political injustice. The organization pushes for athletes to keep their political opinions to themselves and put the focus towards football, diminishing their freedom to speak out about public issues that directly affect their lives. This led to the NFL blackballing him. In terms of the public reaction to Kaepernick's peaceful protest, the 49ers acknowledge that the national anthem is a way to honor our country and reflect on liberties we are afforded as American citizens. One of the initial reactions was Kaepernick's jersey was top selling among NFL players, and the story was becoming national news. President Obama made a statement saying he cares about some real legitimate issues that have to be talked about. On the other side, the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell didn't agree with what he was doing, as the first week of the regular season, other players were joining in as well as raising fists. As the protest went on and Kaepernick was done playing with the 49ers, he could not get signed to another team. Mediocre quarterbacks were landing with other teams, and suspicions grew that he was being blackballed by NFL owners who presumably didn't want the attention that signing him would bring. He has not played professionally since the 49ers' final game of that season on January 1st, 2017. In response to claims they were targeting the military, players took pains to clarify their message and pointed out they were trying to raise awareness of police brutality and social injustice. Owners also ruled that players could no longer kneel during the anthem without being subject to punishment, but allowed that they could remain in the locker room during the anthem. Kaepernick's initial protesting during the national anthem has influenced many other professional athletes and teams to unite in protests in the same manner. His kneeling is especially influential in today's world following the recent murder of George Floyd. Kaepernick has continued to use his social platform to bring awareness to this movement and get more people to speak out about it.